Hi, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Green Dragon Podcast. I'm your host, Aiden, and this week is going to be a very fun episode. We've got Kevin Milligan and John Gassner on the podcast to talk about American cuisine and what's better than talking about food. So this is going to be an excellent podcast. Hope you all enjoy. Let's get started with the show. Good evening, gentlemen. How are you all doing? John,
Awesome.
welcome. Kevin, welcome to the show
Thank
for the
you.
first time. We've had two of your siblings on the show. At this point, we're just gonna make sure we get all of you on. It feels
Gotta
right.
represent.
Yeah, exactly. And then we've got John Gassner. It's been a minute, John, but you're back.
Yo,
Back in.
howdy, thanks.
What have you been up to, John?
Uh,
Anything
just
exciting?
trying to start a bakery, man, out of my home.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Maybe one of these days we'll have to have you do a full cooking show. Maybe we'll fly out to John, guys, and we'll do a full cooking with John episode.
We'll all make a dish. He'll review it. Pull a Gordon Ramsay.
Yeah, you could. You know what would be even better? You and Kevin, give us, pull some like Iron Chef thing, and you can be like the chefs that like taste the food at the end, and then you can have me, Tom, and Jake cook you a dish, or give us ingredients. Even better, give us like a handful of ingredients, and then we have to cook a dish. I think that'd be pretty fantastic. I think that would make a great episode, and you can just scream at us the whole time.
And throw it against the wall, just
Yeah.
Kick us out of the house.
Yeah. That would be fun. That would be fun. Now, Kevin, you're all jokes aside, you're an actual chef, like, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm the chef for American French Fusion, actually.
American French Fusion. So that sounds actually really good. So what, I have to admit, I've talked a little bit of crap about the French on this show. So tell me a little bit about what French cuisine is, and then what it means to be American French Fusion, because I think I owe the French a little bit more respect, maybe when it comes to food. At least after doing a little bit of research for this episode, but I think Americans made it better. I don't know, maybe that's a hot take, but I think we perfected what the French started.
Change his mind, Kevin.
Change my mind.
French classically look down their noses at American food is not delicate enough. Like, in the Thomas Jefferson's time, which I'm sure we'll get to, you have people saying that there's just way too much grease. Already in that time, 1760s, too much grease in American food, which is hilarious because we already had that going for us back then. They are focusing on being very delicate, local food. Always local food, which we get on that bandwagon too. Like California cuisine starts that as well. Very localized and fresh. What we've focused on mostly at my restaurant is taking the comfortableness of American food, pretty large portions, just the starchy potatoes, meat, adding French sauces like their hollandaise and their mushroom creams that cook for a long time with a nice dry white wine, but presenting it so like take a meatloaf, classic American food meatloaf.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get more American besides maybe a hamburger. It's just like this meat of ground beef.
Shaped as a loaf of bread.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like, screw the bread, let's just make it meat.
Right. Well, putting it on a smoked potato creme with an apricot barbecue sauce and blanched asparagus, calling that French American fusion.
Okay, cool.
Trying to bring some delicateness without losing the comfortableness of the American Midwest.
I gotcha. Okay, that's fair. That sounds like something I would choose to eat. See, like I'm like a very much like if I'm gonna eat food, it's either gonna be steak and potatoes or like a Paula Deen cookie that has like 12 sticks of butter for like one cookie. Like something that's just obnoxiously fatty.
Sure.
That's comfort food right there. So yeah, that sounds like a very approachable cuisine. That sounds better than like I sometimes imagine like, and this is just my ignorance, but I sometimes imagine European cuisine and I just think like a few like pretty leaves drizzled with some like balsamic glaze and then like a little medallion of meat. And it's just like, I don't know. That's not for me. That's not for
No.
me. But
Well, you'd
okay.
love James Beard then. That's what he thought too. So
Mm. That's too funny. So I know a little bit about John's what got John into food and cooking. So tell me a little bit about yourself and what got you into cooking before we get into American cuisine, because I am a little bit curious. Like how did that passion all start?
yeah, so I mean, I guess it starts with hospitality in general, like loving the hospitality experience, having a great like party loving parents who know how to throw a good party and like the finer things in life, and seeing people build memories with friends in a hospitality setting. Also, from my own experience, some of the best times I've had are from sitting down to a good meal with friends,
Hmm.
and wanting to recreate that for people. So I guess I'm not completely sold on simply the culinary side of the hospitality industry, if you want to call it an industry. Um, but it's more like being able to provide the whole experience to
Yeah.
customers and giving them back memories and like a beautiful experience to share with somebody. So yeah, that's kind of how, and just finding myself more on the chef side versus the management is how it
Hmm.
turned out.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, that's really cool. I will say that, like um the more I get into like going out to restaurants and trying new things, there's definitely like there's there's something really special when you find a place that has a great ambiance and great food and it puts it all together in this like it's like a packet, like the total package that you're getting there. And yeah, there's something really special about when you find that type of place. Like it not only combines the food, the environment that you're in, the sounds, the smells, everything, and it pulls it all
Staff,
together
definitely the
into
staff too.
yeah, yeah. There's something really special about finding that type of place. So that's really cool.
Yeah,
So
that place.
do you have aspirations to like have multiple restaurants in the
Oh
future?
sure, oh
Okay.
sure, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Me and John are working on that towards each other, kind of
We got big
restaurant
plans.
group.
Got big
Big plan.
plans?
Yeah, big plans.
Tell me, would you be willing to share these big plans or these secret big plans?
Well, we've got one where we're gonna basically run a restaurant group that takes over the US, and then
Yep.
another one that's perhaps more cinematic that Kevin could tell you about.
Which one's that one? The 1920s formal place?
The like traveling one,
The which one?
exotic places, setting up in exotic places.
Oh yeah. The
Uh,
catering company. The catering company.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that one's super cool.
So
I
what is
think
it?
I'm
What
a.
is that? Yeah, what is that?
Oh,
So
okay.
you
That
track,
that's
is that it?
that's
Is
the
it?
idea of having like a catering group that specializes in techniques and equipment that no one else can replicate or have it yet.
Okay.
Where we have our own brand of equipment that gives us the ability to cater to very large groups of people in a very expensive and like Michelin star way, where
Hmm.
we are looking to be the ones who get the contract on large large like I don't know, League of Nation meetings or large corporations going to a country to like get their get their oil empire going or whatever it is, right?
sure.
And being the ones that they call because they know that we can give them like a multi-million-dollar experience.
That's cool. So it's fine dining. It's basically catering. That's a fine dining experience
And on a large
at
scale,
a
which
large
is what
scale.
the very scientific, like making the right equipment to be able to do that comes in.
Yeah, yeah. No, I can imagine the logistics behind doing something like that would be pretty immense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a most practical idea, John's and my most practical idea so far is to have a gastro pub restaurant group where it focuses on having very small gastro pubs, which are like very small cocktail, few tables, amazing food, kind of a destination tucked away somewhere. Those are becoming very popular. They're easy to manage, low costs compared to opening, something like 100-seat restaurant, and just sprouting those up in places different everywhere. Not necessarily a chain, but a group where we can like work with each one individually and in a unique way,
Okay.
and not having to
Yeah,
commit
just
too
kind of
much
like
financially to each
incorporating.
one. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, like incorporating especially unique locations or
Mm.
integrating a gastropub into like a historic area or
Oh,
something.
cool.
Yeah,
Like especially like say on the East Coast where you've got all these historic areas, then you kind of fit the concept to the region and that specific, town, city, whatever
Oh,
neighborhood.
yeah, that'd be really cool. That'd be a really neat idea. That's something that yeah, that I think more areas could use because a lot of times you travel and you go to certain areas of the country do it better than others. Like here in Atlanta, I mean there's a lot of good food options and there are a lot of unique options, but you go to other areas and it's like always the same things, like over and over and over again. So it'd be cool to have like more unique options, especially tailored towards American. If you had different locations that had different dishes that were based around that area or that cuisine from that area of the
Hmm.
country, that'd be really cool.
Yeah. I mean, that's something Kevin and I would need to talk further about, but something I've noticed is that you have like, there's definitely a high concentration within cities of unique locations and restaurants. But
Hmm.
when you get into suburban areas, that's kind of like a underdeveloped market where you don't really have reliable, high quality food or dining experiences. It's either like a chain or some sort of independent family restaurant that serves generic food, which is
Yeah.
awesome, but pizza gets old, after a certain
gas
point, and
station
so do
pizzerias.
games.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. Definitely. I think the big cities always have a lot more to offer, and then you get out in the suburbs and it's just kind of meh in most places. And you're like,
Yeah,
this is great. This is fine. But then you feel like you've been like gypped somehow. Like when you go to a big city, you're like, oh my gosh, look at all these amazing food options. Like, why doesn't my small suburb
yeah.
have these? Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for me, like, I think it'd be awesome to have some of that like high quality food and unbelievable service in
Hmm.
kind of like an unassuming spot outside of the city. Because I'm not a fan of cities, but I like this, suburbs and more rural areas. But it'd be
Yeah.
nice to have some of that taste in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that'd be really cool. Yeah. Yeah, so maybe we pivot here a little bit and we talk about because we were talking a lot about just food in general, but I'm curious what you guys' thoughts are on like defining better what American cuisine is because I think it's something that like if you ask the average person like, oh, what is American cuisine? They'd probably give you something like hamburgers or hot dogs or something along those lines. Like there's not too many. I don't think the average person, I don't even think I really have a great understanding of like what American cuisine is. Do you guys want to maybe we can jump into this by starting out like, how do you even start to define what American cuisine is, or can you define what American cuisine is? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Sean, you go first.
Yeah, I think it starts with perspective. Like, I mean, if you want to answer the question, then it's kind of like from whose perspective uh, is American, excuse me, from whose perspective are you trying to define American food?
Mhm.
And I think it's difficult to define because America is composed of a nation of immigrants, and like the principles and ideals of America are what defines it and what draws all those people to it. And so I think there's a bit of that spirit in American food, and it kind of becomes a mixing bowl. And honestly, like, I know that isn't a full definition, but I think that Americans are pretty lucky because we get to have like all of it and all combined in different ways that wouldn't happen any other way. Yeah,
Yeah,
my preliminary definition.
yeah, I think that's a really good point. Yeah, I think we are lucky because we're a melting pot, that we have so many different inputs into our cuisine. Like, I mean, you think about all the different cultures that are coming here, bringing their own cuisine, their own food, their own family traditions with cooking and sharing meal times and all this stuff, and you get this very diverse culture, and it varies because the United States is so big too, and different areas have more or less of different cultures and people. So you get this very wide range of cuisine, and I think sometimes it's maybe this is where I think a lot of people just don't understand American cuisine, is because it's so vast. Like, it's hard to pinpoint one type of food that defines American cuisine. Whereas, like, if you go to Italy, I mean, it's pretty easy to pinpoint pasta. Like, I mean, that's like where the first thing everybody goes to, because the types of cuisine in Italy are, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think more limited than the offerings and the variety of different cuisine that we have here in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, I think with like, I think people have a hard time grasping the size and diversity of the US, like in terrain only. So, like, you brought up Italy. Like, if you go to Italy, it varies, but Italy is like, it's a drastically smaller country than the US, and that confines its, the terrain. And so you have like in the north of Italy, there's dairy, whereas in like
Mm-hmm.
Sicily, it's seafood, and like noodles, or the concept, of noodles, tie that all together in different ways. Freshness of ingredients are huge for them. And I think it's difficult when you go to the US because, like California, you're going to have different food from what you're going to have. You're not going to have seafood in Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
And Kansas is going to emphasize beef. And yeah, I think that adds to the complexity of pinpointing it.
Also, the complexity of our populations, which you've already mentioned, John.
Yeah.
Like, something that's also different from, say, Italy would be the enormous diversity of who we have here,
Mm-hmm.
and whether we're making American Chinese, Americanized Chinese, or Americanized Italian. I think one of the hard things to pinpoint in America is what is fusion and what is Americanized food.
Mm.
So we could take like an Americanized Chinese food and they would be like, that's not Chinese. Yeah, but it's Americanized Chinese. Or same with Italian food,
Mm-hmm.
like our pizzas alone look drastically different. And then what is a fusion between, say, French and American or Asian and American? Yeah, I think those are two things that are noteworthy to differentiate.
Yeah, definitely. And like, it's hard to like pinpoint where to draw the line there on what is fusion and what is not. Yeah. I will say this though, the Italians do not have better pizza than we do. We have better pizza than the Italians. I'm just putting that out there. We do it better. We do it better. New York pizza is the best pizza.
Don't
Chicago's
forget the
like
deep dish though. Chicago deep dish.
Chicago.
One.
Chicago is the close. Well, here's the thing about deep dish. Deep dish can't even be in the same conversation as, I mean, it is pizza. You can't like put like Detroit style deep dish and New York thin crust all in the same category. Like they are different types of pizza. And I would say the Italian version of pizza is completely different than what we have here. So you can't really like it's not like apples to apples comparisons, obviously. But I think we have, I mean, I just named off 3 different American types of pizza right there. Is case in point, we do pizza better. We took it from the Italians. We are the pizza kings of the world. Do you guys?
I can speak.
Oh, Jake,
Speak
go
from
ahead.
experience. It's not the same. Not even close.
Do you guys know who you guys follow Dave Portnoy from Barstool Sports, and he does the pizza reviews?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's the pizza connoisseur. He is the ultimate authority on pizza.
Hey,
I don't know.
Keep hurting small businesses. I'm just kidding. Allegedly.
Allegedly that one pizza guy in, what was it? Was it like Massachusetts didn't like him?
Massachusetts Dragon Pizza. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's funny.
It just looked gross. The way he was, like how thin the crust was, the cheese was all, I don't know, it looked like rubber.
I will say there are some pizzas that maybe they're not for me. They just aren't. They don't
all created equal.
They're not all created equal. Pizzas are not all created equal. They don't have they don't have the same they don't have the same rights as each other. You're not allowed to give the same rights to a crappy piece of pizza as a good crispy New York pizza. Okay, so where do we start, John, in this journey of defining American cuisine? Because we have to start somewhere. Where would you say where's the first major input into like what American cuisine is? Like, is there a specific moment in time where you think we can like pinpoint the roots of American cuisine?
It's rough. I mean, because it like I said, it all depends on who you are as an American. Like you're an immigrant.
Mm-hmm.
Say you're a Chinese immigrant, that's going to be drastically different from what you call an American dish is drastically different from what a Dutch American calls an American dish, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think there's stereotypical American foods for sure. Like barbecue, burgers, pizza, wings, whatever. I think if you want to go back to like where food first showed up in America, is kind of starts with the Jamestown settlers coming in, and I believe they were pretty inept at like cultivating the soil and everything until the Native Americans showed them how to do it. And then they, brought in, what is it? The Three Sisters is the name of it. It's like squash, corn, and
beans.
One other crop. Beans, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like the diet for them was game, obviously, and then those cultivated crops. And then I think you could trace it from like those game meats into for me, like the introduction of the pig in America stands out. Like the pig is the perfect animal. Like if you just want to make a sausage, or compared to the amount of like land that cattle needs to graze on. Like pig has it all. It eats your trash, turns it into beautiful food that's high in fat or
Mhm.
protein and is going to fuel you. And so like pig was huge as a Virginian, and in Virginia, that was like where barbecue started,
Mhm.
in like just the smoking of meats, smokehouses making sausages. And then from there, obviously, like once you get past the first colonial settlers, then things really explode. Um, but I think you can divide the first, like in the 18th century, that would be probably European influence, and then like Spanish influence down in Florida
Mhm.
would be the first division.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the pig because I think that is kind of a when you look across the board, that's a real staple in American cuisine. Um, whether it's in barbecue or yeah, like you said, sausages and all these
Mm-hmm.
different types of meals. And I think it for probably for especially like poorer people, like farmers, like I mean, if they were raising crops, it's fairly easy livestock to maintain and like relatively cheap. Whereas like some other things like cattle maybe are a little bit more expensive to maintain. So
Yeah.
I think that definitely plays a role. I know like even in like the regional styles of barbecue, that's something that's really interesting too, like the different regional styles of barbecue. So you have like Texas barbecue, which is very like beef based. A lot of those sort of Western states have a barbecue that's usually a little bit more beef based, and that's usually just because of the ranching influence out in that area of the country, whereas the eastern and the southeastern United States has a lot more pork influence. And one of the things that's interesting too, like especially like down here in Georgia, or even if you go to um, like Arkansas has this too. You'll like the or South Carolina is another big one. The pork barbecue is such a big deal, and it's so ingrained in the culture. And it was actually started by the that style of cooking was actually like the whole hog barbecue, and that style of cooking was actually started by the African American slaves. And it was because the slave owners would basically they would eat the beef and they would they would give the slaves pork and chicken to raise. And so that whole hog style of barbecue became really, really popular in the South after the slaves were emancipated because that's really all they had to eat. And it was fairly, cheap. Most of them had hogs. So that's why like there's such a big pork dominant influence on Southern barbecue and like that whole hog style of barbecue in the South. So it's really interesting, like when you look at different areas in the country and just like the demographics of people, how one sort of even protein can be determined by the situations.
I think
Yeah.
American lifestyle has drastically influenced how some other ethnicities um, culinary culture has changed here because of, and you can see that as early as like Thomas Jefferson's time,
Hmm.
where you have the slave populations that need like quick, easy food, and Thomas Jefferson introduced polenta to America to feed a
Mhm.
slave. And look where polenta is now. It's in like pretty high cuisine. And you can do great things with it. But the French and the English, I mean, Charles Dickens thought that his trip to America was, quote, a culinary disaster. That's in the middle of the 1800s. But it's quick food. It's all like from the get go, it's been fast food.
Yeah.
Um, Delmonico is the first fine dining restaurant in America, 1838. They would serve 12-course meals, 14-course meals, but they would give 8 minutes per meal per course. Like that's the timeline that they gave their guests to eat their food because Americans eat their food fast.
Yeah.
from the get-go. And that's just interesting with and we prefer faster ways of cooking. Like
Yeah.
that's the whole like greasy American classic food. You cook it in oil, fastest way to cook food in oil. You flash fire. So that's interesting, the way the American culture has taken food, changed it to fit our lifestyle.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never really thought about that, but you're right. Like, I think because we're, I mean, a country of immigrants, it's always been like nose to the grindstone. We have shit to do. We don't have time to sit around and spend 13 hours whipping up something fancy. Like, it's what's convenient, what's tasty, what's going to keep me fueled throughout the day to get the tasks done that are needed. Like, especially when you start moving west into the once we had the Western expansion after the Louisiana Purchase, and a lot of that land became farmland, and there was just a lot of they're just farmers don't have a lot of time throughout the day to sit around and cook a meal. So what's easy, or the ranchers, or if you look at the cowboys, there's a reason that campfire cooking, one skillet meals became so popular and prevalent, because they don't have time to sit around and make some gourmet meal.
But also what's interesting is that the lifestyle in the Americas also drastically differs. John and I at one point put on this 10-course meal that was just East Coast food. I'm from the Northeast, he's from the Southeast, from Virginia. And we kind of like put our cuisines together, and it was interesting to see again like what's coming out of each region on the East Coast.
Yeah.
And barbecue is classic in the South because the lifestyle's slower, right? You're getting 900-degree stone fire pizza in the North, right? You have all the Italians in the industrial cities, and we're pumping out faster and faster pizzas, thin crust. And then you go down south and you have the barbecue, because people love to like sit and have the experience of cooking their meat really slowly for a long time,
Yeah.
So you can see in America where our lifestyles have split and produce different Americanized food.
Yeah, it comes down to a very regional thing. Yeah.
Yeah, Kevin, I think that idea of like speed is really interesting that you bring up, because like fast food gets bashed a lot, and I mean the health is probably not the greatest, but the idea that fast food has always been around in America, it could be key to like the identity of Americans. Like,
Yeah.
Europe is a much, much more settled region where things have been going for, 1,000, is that right? 1,000 years. So, and in comparison, America is, very, very young. And our identity is to forge something out of the materials that we have. And we're focused on that production of something, as opposed to resting or being surrounded by the same land that the family's been surrounded by for hundreds of years. Like, there's not a whole lot new in Europe, but there's still places in America where people haven't been. Like, you think about out west, it's crazy.
Yeah.
You go out to Wyoming and you can go places where probably no person has set foot still.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, I think
And it's just like food is built to fuel that American dream of like creating something.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the expansiveness of our country plays a huge role in that. So you look at the size of the United States compared to Europe, and it's just completely different. Like, there's so much opportunity. People aren't focused on sitting back and relaxing. They're focused on going and finding opportunity. Like, even if you look at like Mexican cuisine, look at some of the dishes. like especially Mexican American cuisine, and you get like things like tamales and even like tacos. I mean, like a taco shell is basically just like a way for you to carry around your food. Like it's a portable like food carrying device. You know, you like I don't know like if you guys have ever seen this, but down here, I'll like see guys and they're like the roofers will like pull up in their white vans into our work parking lot, and it'll be lunchtime, so right around noon, and they'll pull out their little like stove, and they'll start cooking up like rice and beans, and then they'll be flipping their taco shells, and they'll be like cooking like a full meal right in the van, and then like 20 minutes they'll be off and back like working on the roofs. Like it's crazy. It's really cool. But like you start to see like the ingenuity of people in figuring out what foods work and what foods don't when they're out working. What's a quick meal? What's something that's easy to eat, portable, and taste good?
Yeah. Hence the burger. I mean, the burger is probably one of the most quintessential American foods. And we made it, and now like every country has a burger.
Yeah.
An American burger.
What are do you guys know the origins of the burger? I don't know the origins of the burger. Anybody have a quick burger history for us?
Well, White Castle was the first. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, it's pretty contested. Some people say it started up in Massachusetts with like basically beef and 2 slices of white bread. Other people say it was started in Hamburg, Germany, and brought over by German immigrants. And then you can find like tens of places in the US claiming ownership of the first burger.
It's like the margarita. Who had the first margarita? I don't know.
Who figured out lime, tequila, and salt taste good together? I was just curious if there was a neat story behind that, because I know there's some like cool stories like about like Thomas Jefferson popularized a lot of things when he because he spent a lot of time studying French cuisine and then bringing a lot of that back to the United States. So like he popularized the tomato again. He brought back tomatoes. Apparently people thought they were poisonous, and he's like, no, these are actually really good. I know he popularized the French fries here. French fries, ice cream, and I think the other one was macaroni and cheese. So he brought those all back. So we have him to thank for those. I mean, I'm sure somebody eventually would have brought it over here, but he was ahead of his time, ahead of his game. He realized that mac and cheese was important to America.
And mac and cheese was actually like a high class food for a while.
Yeah.
Until it became like, in a like a home cooking staple.
Yeah.
Like, Monaco's was serving it on their like high end course meals. So
I don't know, a good mac and cheese, like if it's done right, like a mac and cheese, and then you get like the breadcrumbs with the bacon and the chives on top, and you do that what is it, a baked mac and cheese? Oh, that's so good. Baked mac and cheese are excellent. Yeah. But yeah, mac and cheese, I think there's an argument for mac and cheese. I think somebody should somebody should add onto their menu macaroni and cheese, but do it high class. Maybe
I've been working on that. That's like a hardcore project of mine.
Okay. I was gonna say use some truffle oil and stuff like that, right? I mean,
like smoked Gruyere or sun-dried tomatoes with andouille. Just trying to figure out what exactly it needs.
The combo. Good. Okay.
You see they have like mac and cheese bars. So it's like Chipotle, but macaroni and cheese.
Oh, I've seen this. Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like basically like build your own mac and cheese.
Uh-huh.
This sounds like the bulking food. Like this is where all the weightlifters go. Drop by the mac and cheese. Maybe get Chipotle on the way home.
It also sounds like a really good way to like make. There's just something like mac and cheese, like a make your own bar. That just sounds like I don't know. It just doesn't sound clean. Like it doesn't seem like cleanly at all. Like it seems like something you get like an infection from, like going to the Mac. I'm gonna go down to the Mac. It's like the equivalent of like going to like a Golden Corral. Like the quality just doesn't seem like it would be there. Quantity, your calorie ratio, sure, I'm sure it's great. Like your dollars to calorie ratios, I'm sure fantastic. But like you can like in those types of places, they never like use the best ingredients. So it's like that like fake nacho cheese that like comes out of the plastic bags that they use at
Velveeta,
like
yeah, Velveeta.
yeah, like that, but not even Velveeta. It's like that stuff they serve at the ballparks where it literally is like this giant plastic like bag that looks like it's like carrying some sort of like human excrement in it, and then they like open up the little like nozzle and it like comes out, and like then you put it on your little chip, your nachos. Ugh. No, there's just something gross about that.
There's
You
American
sound like
food
you've
for
been
you.
scarred by it.
I've heard stories. I had a friend that worked at a ballpark, and he told me that stuff's not safe. He's like there's very few things you can get at a baseball game that are like he's like that I would recommend. And I think I think it was like anything that's sealed that comes pre-bagged, so any like sort of chip or candy. He's like, yeah, that's probably fine. Everything else where they cook it, no, not great. Um, yeah, I don't know. But I think there's room in this country for upscaling mac and cheese.
Totally.
Oh, but are
It could be you, Aiden.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't know if I'm cut out for that business.
Quit the
Maybe.
paper company.
Yeah,
Open up a mac and cheese company.
quit the paper company. I'll start my own mac and cheese bars. Aiden's
Yeah.
mac and cheese. I think I'm good. I think I'm good. Okay. So is there any other like points in our history that are like pivotal points in American cuisine? Is there like
I would say
so we talked about Thomas Jefferson, obviously, like that him bringing a lot of the French cuisine here is important. After that, like 19th, 20th century, are there like major influences there that play a role?
I feel
I mean,
like
I
there's
think
two. Oh,
there's two
you
more.
go ahead,
Go
Kevin.
ahead, John. No, I'm excited to hear what you'll say.
Okay, so I think the first one would be the big immigration in the 1800s of all the European immigrants, especially Italians. You had the Irish coming over from the potato famine. You've got Dutch, Germans, and then after that, in the late 18th century, you have Eastern European nations coming over, and they brought all their food with them. And so that was a huge influx in the variety of food. And like, what would American food be without Italian food, for example?
Mm-hmm.
Then after that, I think the 20s up until like the 50s, 60s, because you have the introduction of, well, first off, prohibition is huge
Mm-hmm.
in America. And then you also have the introduction of like canned foods and that whole different way of eating. Like it was a whole shift from everything had to be prepared that day. Like you are tied, you have a family member who is tied to the stove, the kitchen. And then you shift into mass production in various ways in a whole new food system in America, which we're kind of operating off of still.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's definitely got pros and cons.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't forget though, like central figures though, as well as movements in American cuisine,
Mm-hmm.
like obviously James Beard and Helen Brown and Fanny Farmer's cookbook, Julia Child. Those characters have definitely shaped at least the world's recognition and our own acceptance of what American cuisine is. I would say like 1950s would be the period when we actually accepted this is like American cuisine, and we're okay with it. With James Beard collaborating with Helen Brown. James Beard had places in New York, so East Coast and Oregon, West Coast. Helen Brown was kind of the forerunner and founder of California cuisine, which was I talked about it earlier, like getting back to fresh ingredients like the margarita pizza, for example.
Okay.
Fresh basil, fresh mozzarella, fresh tomatoes. That's a very like classic California cuisine pizza. So James Beard, I think, spearheaded the idea of fusion in America versus Americanized food. We would take people's cuisines and make them Americanized, but he wanted to, first of all, de-snob our culinary ambition. I think he was very American. He and his characteristic, he was like a television personality. He was a teacher. He wrote 20 books. And he was like this fat, jolly, kind of like crude personality that broke down a lot of people's like snobbery about what cuisine should be. And that's very American, I think. What you're getting from the French is a very austere expectation, and what American cuisine has done is kind of like made it comfortable and approachable, and that's what he wanted to do with his cookbooks, is make cooking, obviously Julia Childs as well, make good food like approachable to people. So anyway, I think that people like that have also made American food like very recognizably in the food scene.
Yeah.
And accepted.
You think, Kevin, that other countries have a thing like comfort food that Americans do? Like, I know how it's very, very common with Americans to say, like, I'm just gonna go eat to make myself feel better. Like,
Yeah.
is that a thing in other countries? I've never really thought about that before.
I'm not sure if I could authoritatively say that, but it seems like Americans are particularly good at it.
Yeah, it's like the binge fest is something very American.
Yeah. And that's why there are books like Why French Women Are Skinny, Why French Women Aren't Fat, I think is the name of the book. Because they just, I mean, they eat good food, but they don't eat a lot. And they don't have that culture of like our comfort mac and cheese or our burgers or our Cheez-Its or our Coke or, whatever it is. Hot Pockets!
Yeah, Hot Pockets.
Hot Pockets.
And you see like frozen dinners first in America.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Waffle House.
Yeah. Waffle House.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I'm sure like the important thing and what I love about hospitality in general is that anywhere you are and whomever you are, it seems like food is important to your life, to your memories. The olfactory nerves actually are the senses of the five senses, the ones that retain the most memory. So, and as you know, like olfactory nerves are like 80% of taste. So if you plug your nose and try to eat a Skittle, you're not going to be able to taste it. And I mean, we've done fun experiments where you plug your nose and you eat jelly beans with your eyes closed.
Oh, yeah.
And you try to guess what flavor it is. You can't until you unplug your nose. So my point is, olfactory nerves are connected to memory, right? And what do we like smelling more than the food that we grew up with? So it seems like everyone would have their comfort food as the ones that bring them back to the memories of places and things and people that they've loved. Yeah. So in that sense, I think everyone has comfort food. I just think that Americans have the most comfortable comfort food.
Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe the most unhealthy comfort foods too.
That's why it's comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you
No
can
one wants
sit.
to sit in an antique Windsor back chair and say it's comfortable. You want to sit in an oversized plush lazy boy that you can kick back.
And eat a bag of Doritos. And eat a bag of Doritos.
That's comfortable.
That's comfort.
Yes.
That's peak comfort right there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like you don't see an Englishman say, "Honey, would you pass me the Dorito?" Like it just wouldn't happen.
No, they say they have stupid words for everything. They call it like a crisp or something, the cheesy crisp. Because they're just yeah. Don't get me started on the British. Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting. I think if you asked 10 different people what their comfort foods were, you'd probably get 10 different answers. And it's all dependent on, what you grew up with, what was around you, and then what gave you that comfort as a child. Yeah.
If you ask like an Italian butcher, it'll be like the tongue sandwich that his mom makes, or like the liver stew or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
The poor food that they grew up eating because
Yeah.
it sold all the best cuts of meat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So where does that leave us now with American cuisine? Like, what are the things you guys have seen over the last, like, I don't know, what are you guys' thoughts over the last, like, maybe 20 years? Has American cuisine changed? Have events like COVID changed the way our food and our cuisine is consumed? Like, are we consuming food differently? Are we going out to, like, I feel like maybe as Americans we're going out to eat more now more than ever, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts?
I think
I
the
think
whole. I'm
that
not. Go ahead, John.
yeah, I think the biggest thing has been like in my mind, there's been a shift from food being primarily fuel
Hmm.
to now taste and enjoyment has become a huge element to that. So, like, not to say that you wouldn't want taste back in the 60s, but that wasn't primary in the way that it is now, especially with the age of, with how social media operates.
Hmm.
People go to restaurants for status, for viral appeal. Like, people eat out now for completely different reasons than they used to. And in addition to that, they see everything. And so they're exposed to so much more food, so many different foods and other things that they wouldn't have otherwise. Which, if you enjoy food, is pretty awesome. I'm not complaining.
Yeah. There seems also to be some kind of rebellion in like I think actually Aiden is right with the whole eating out more. I feel like people are like some kind of they're fed up. They were fed up with the whole quarantine thing, and now people just want to be out and mingling and
Yeah.
it shut down a lot of restaurants, but the resurgence in newer restaurants now is like astronomical.
Yeah, that's what I was curious about, because I feel like if you look at pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic and the amount of new restaurants that were coming out pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic, it's night and day. I feel like the amount of new restaurants coming out now, and maybe it's just me in a growing city, but it seems like there's a new restaurant every week and it's something different and they're trying something a little bit, like if it's another Mexican restaurant, they're they have a different setup, different, way they serve their food, whatever it is that differentiates them from everybody else. So it just seems like there's a lot of people with a lot of really cool, and maybe it's a lot of people realized as they were at home that they wanted to, like, follow their passions. And so hopefully that means there's more passion projects. There's more people doing what they love out there and more people decided to go into food, but it did seem a little bit interesting. The other thing I'm curious about is, like, what do you guys think like I think there was definitely a shift in how the average American consumed their meals. And I'm talking about like the family dinner, because I think for a long time family dinners were really, really, really important. And there seems to be a shift, and it seems to be right around the 19 seems right around where the TV dinners pop in the 60s, where that changes a little bit. But I wanted to get you guys' thoughts, because it seems like the family meal or like gathering around a dinner table shifted at some point in the mid to late 20th century. Would that be correct in saying? Because I think that's a big cultural shift in American cuisine as well.
I could be wrong, but it seems like I could be wrong, but it seems like that cultural shift was driven by the industrialization of food, not
Mm,
vice versa. I don't
okay.
feel like that industry was catering to the lifestyle of people. I feel like it dictated the lifestyle of people.
Mm,
John had mentioned like World War II, and like the processing of food and things, and that changing foods availability and accessibility and ease of use. But I feel like in the same way the fashion industry kind of dictates what people are wearing
mm,
because it says so, versus like people realize they could do this with food. They could make processed food this ways. They could make TV dinners. Uh, and that kind of like dictates people how they should eat, right?
mm.
If you have a TV in your room, in your living room, then the TV is telling you how you're going to be eating,
Yeah.
right? Because obviously you're going to be sitting around it, instead of at the table, for
Mhm.
example.
Yeah.
James Beard famously said that he had become a culinary whore because he started marketing big brand names for industrialized food just to make money for his institutions and schools, and completely against his ideology. But he like became a face for Kraft and things and other
Mhm.
corporations that were making processed foods, and like buying into like our culinary idol was buying into the like industrialization of food that was being pushed.
Mm, mhm.
So
That's
I don't
in.
know if that directly answers your question, but I feel
No,
like
I think, yeah, I think, yeah, that's an interesting point. I never really looked at it that way before. I kind of saw, I think, with the around the same time as the industrialization of food, I think, America was becoming more industrialized, and kind of the family dynamics had changed a little bit too. So I'd always kind of looked
sure.
at it from that perspective. But it is interesting to think about it, because I think to a certain extent you are definitely right. I think like what were what was kind of like pushed out in kind of like this like serving trough in front of us, whether it's food or fashion or entertainment, what have you. It's kind of what the choices that we're given, unless you really go out of your way and you're an
Yeah,
outlier. And so I
yeah,
think it's easier just to go with, okay, this is what's in the stores. This is what we have access to. Yeah.
I feel like our industrial lifestyle though had already evolved into that many years before
Hmm.
the 60s, 50s, and 60s, and TV dinners and things. Like we were famous for our industrialized spirit when the time of democracy in America was written,
Sure. Yeah.
late 1700s. So
Yeah.
uh, I think what's really interesting for American cuisine um, is the introduction of the celebrity chef.
Hmm. Okay.
So that's
Yeah.
interesting. The Gordon Ramsays.
Uh-huh.
I guess I couldn't say definitively whether America started that or whether. Well, yeah, that's not true. I mean, French had theirs, but we in America are so driven by celebrity chefs now,
Hmm.
where you go into a restaurant and the restaurant has the name of the owner, of the chef owner, right? It's about the chef.
Yeah.
It's about the chef's personality, and it's no longer about the whole hospitality experience. And it's something where we're fighting to get back to. Like Madison, Madison 11 is one of those restaurants that's very few restaurants that's known for its hospitality versus the Gordon Ramsay restaurants,
Mhm. Yeah, that is it. I can't think of any other country or culture that really pushed a certain or like marketed their food around a certain chef before we did.
French Laundry, the French Laundry in California.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. So if we could sum up what we've learned tonight, what do you think the most important take? Like, if somebody was to ask you, Kevin or John, what is American cuisine, or how would you define, or how would you approach American cuisine? What is your, like, I don't want to say elevator pitch, but like, what's your short answer to them? Like, if you were gonna try to capture somebody's attention and give them American cuisine in like 60 seconds or less. You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you capture what American cuisine is? Because I think one of the things we talked about tonight is like it's so like expansive that it's kind of hard to capture. So like, how would you capture the idea of what American cuisine is and communicate that? I'm not going to ask you softball questions, John. You guys are the food experts here. I'm just some idiot that, cooks chicken and rice almost for 90% of my meals. So chicken, rice, and beef. If I could fry it in a pan quick, that's what I count as food.
For me, I think if I had to sum up American food, I would say that it is food that has meaning to you, as that is almost tied to me. It's tied to the American dream and the American identity, as in the pursuit of something beyond yourself, some sort of loftier goal and vision that you're striving for, or that your family or your clan within America has pursued.
I like that.
So yeah.
That's good. That's a great answer. Kevin, do you want to add anything to that? Would you say it any differently than John?
Trying to think of my last word. I think there's 3 words that I'm looking for that can kind of like. I would say convenience, diversity, and integrity are the 3 words that American food tries to emulate. We are all about getting the food quick, not messing around. We're all about our diversity. We want a very diverse palette of food. We're the melting pot of the world. And then our integrity is like, this is American food and we like it this way, and we're not French snobs, and if you come to our place, then this is how we're going to make it.
I like that. I'm going to clip that last part just so I can capture you saying we're not French snobs. And then that's gonna be on our Instagram and YouTube, because I think I've got several clips of me talking about French snobbery. So now there's somebody else talking about French snobbery. We're actually gonna change the name of this This,
I work
this
for a French American restaurant.
I know. We're gonna tag them too. Don't you worry, Kevin. No, I'm kidding. We're gonna change the name of this podcast to the French Hate Podcast or something.
Just create a reel of all the best French roasts that we've had. That will be one of them, Kevin. promise you that. That's up there.
Yours will be the first one on the list, Kevin.
Glad to contribute. Glad to contribute.
The people will love it, Kevin. The people will love it. That's fantastic. Is there anything we missed? Is there anything that's like paramount to this discussion that we completely overlooked? I think we covered it pretty well, but maybe I'm totally missing something.
What do you think, John?
I think pride. I think Americans need to have more pride in their food. Like, you get to eat the best darn food and food from all over in a way that other people don't. And, don't stand for people bashing how American food is all unhealthy and it's just this fast food garbage, because that's doing a disservice to your identity as an American and, the food that makes you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When they tell you it's unhealthy, you give them a fried, or you give them one of those fried Twinkies or Snickers bars.
You
tell
show
them,
them what's best.
you show them. Give them a fried
People
stick
have
of
been
butter.
criticizing our American spirit since democracy in America was written, and they're still doing it, and we're still doing the same thing. Sorry, world.
Yeah, sorry we like our fried sticks. Sorry we like fried sticks of butter. It's not our fault. They're good. Come on. Okay, John, you that was a great answer, by the way. But you said pride, and I was like,
Oh.
John, because you said it and then you paused. I was like, we're gonna talk about pride. I was like, where are we going?
No,
with
they
this?
stole that word. That is a strong word that has been stolen and misused.
Our food has rainbows.
The
The American dream.
rainbow food. I mean, isn't that what Lucky
Hey, Fruit
Charms
Loops,
is?
come on.
Fruit Loops,
Fruit
yeah.
Loops, Lucky Charms.
Can't get much more American than that.
Artificially flavored corn cereal that has like every, artificial dye in it too. Oh, fantastic. Fruit Loops are great. Man, what a great cereal. I will say that American grocery stores are better than any other grocery stores. Our access to not only different types of food, but like ingredients when you go in the grocery stores is absolutely incredible. And
I
like,
love the little international aisle that you get.
Oh,
One
yeah.
aisle out of every store. International. It's right here.
and
then the
it's
rest
like,
is like
and it's like,
everything
and
you
it's like, it's like a can of,
Everything else.
it's a can of salsa, some soy sauce, and some like rice noodles. And they're like, that sums it up, guys. It's like sweet and sour sauce, the salsa, and some taco shells.
Fried pasta.
Yeah, some pasta. Yeah, it's too funny. Too funny. All right, guys. Well, that's all I have for this one. If you guys got anything else.
It's been real.
All right, it's been great. Do you guys want to, John, Kevin, do you want to plug your social media or anything like that? Your business?
Yeah, my bakery is in Stafford, Virginia. You can hit me up on Instagram at Cooking with Gas. That's cooking_with GASS. See some fiery breads on there.
John makes good
If
bread.
you're swinging through Lincoln, Nebraska, go to L's Kitchen.
L's Kitchen, Lincoln, Nebraska. Awesome. Guys, this has been great. I appreciate you guys
Thanks,
getting
Dan.
on.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you,
Yeah,
Jake.
this has been fantastic. Thanks everybody for tuning in to this week's conversation. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. If you did, you can drop us a like, leave us a comment or review. We appreciate hearing from you guys. If this is your first time listening to the podcast and you like what you heard, go give us a follow at the Green Dragon Podcast on YouTube, Instagram, and True Social, and the Green Dragon Pod on Rumble and Twitter. You can listen to our show everywhere you go on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, new podcasts every Friday. Until next time, be safe, fight for what you believe in, and most importantly, be a good American. God bless.